A hypothesis is an educated guess about the world around you. It should be testable either by experiment, observation, or perhaps a survey of people. It really could be anything as long as you can test it. For example, you might think that the Earth is flat. You can certainly test that with measurement and experimentation. You might think that cake is nutritious, or you might think that drug A works better than other drugs in its class. Next, let's talk about the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is the commonly accepted fact. As a researcher, you work to reject, nullify, or disprove this null hypothesis. The word null in this context means that it's a commonly accepted fact that researchers work to nullify. It doesn't mean that the statement itself is null. It doesn't mean that it amounts to nothing. So it means something that's nullifiable, not something that is zero or nothing. In notation, the null hypothesis is written as H sub naught or H sub 0. Next, let's talk about the alternate hypothesis. Your alternative hypothesis is the claim you're going to test. It is the alternative to the null hypothesis. In notation, the alternative hypothesis is written as H sub 1 or H sub alpha. You might also hear that heard as H sub A. Let's take a look at an example. It's an accepted fact that ethanol boils at 173 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's say you have a theory that ethanol actually has a different boiling point of 174 degrees Fahrenheit. The accepted fact that ethanol boils at 173 is the null hypothesis. Your theory, ethanol boils at temperatures of 174 degrees Fahrenheit, is the alternate hypothesis. Another quick example, let's say one class in a particular school performs poorly on tests. The null hypothesis might be that it's due to the teacher and their poor performance. After visiting the school, you might think that that particular classroom has poor ventilation and therefore that's why the students are performing poorly on tests. The null hypothesis is that the teacher is the problem. Your alternate hypothesis is that it's the ventilation equipment. The null and alternate hypotheses are related mathematically. To show you how this works, let's take a look at an example. The students in class 1, 2, 3 score on average 62 on tests. The null hypothesis might be that the average or the mean is 62. The symbol mu there is a Greek letter and we use that in statistics to mean the mean or average. The alternate hypothesis is that the mean is not equal to 62. So we have equal and not equal, and those are mathematical opposites. We are looking for one of two outcomes. The first outcome is to reject that null hypothesis. We say that we have gathered enough evidence to say that the null hypothesis is probably not true and we can replace it with our alternate. The other outcome is that we fail to reject the null hypothesis. What that means is that we just haven't gathered enough evidence to say that the null hypothesis is probably not true. We can decide to accept or reject the null hypothesis mathematically. For that, we use a test statistic. A test statistic is calculated from sample data. Going back to our classroom problem and our test results, what you could do is just sample a few students at a time, find their average test result, and from that you can calculate a test statistic. Once you've calculated that test statistic, you can ask yourself, are your results significant? Your test statistic will tell you where to draw that line. The last topic I want to go over is a confidence level. Typical confidence levels are 90, 95 and 99%. And what you're saying is, I am 99% confident my results are correct. A confidence level is related to an alpha level. They are mathematical opposites of each other. They add up to 100%. For example, if you have a 90% confidence level, you have a 10% alpha level. These are both saying the same thing. For example, I could say that I am 99% confident that my results are correct, or I could say I tested at a 1% alpha level.